when Taylor, our oldest, was, I don't know, 1 or 2, I was real serious in class one day, and I said, we just found out Taylor was born illiterate. And Marcy goes, oh. So, did anybody catch that? Okay. All right, we're ready? All right, let's go. We're going to do a little bit of a review. Neil's taking me back to the old mic until we tweak the new mic. The new mic's going to be awesome, but we never even practiced that before. So he's working on it. I appreciate all the work him and Skip put into it. He's got to put with me sending my notes.
I'm spell checking them, baby.
Yeah, you missed one. Anyway, so let's do a review real quick. Last week we talked about light, and what does light do, real quick? Energy, life, what else? Illuminates growth, power. Like in what? They use light in what?
Radio waves.
Communication, lasers.
Solar.
Do what? Solar. It's extremely powerful. It really, I think Mike said it, without light, there is no life. You know, you think about the health benefits, plants grow from it, on and on and on. It travels 186,266 miles a second. It can circle Earth in 1 second, 7.5 times. Okay? It's incredible, the power of light. A cool study would be, and we're not going to do it, but a cool study would be, if you're more scientific, is look at all the things dealing with light, and then go back and go, why did Jesus say he's the light of the world? Because he brings life and energy and power and all those things, okay? And it's attractive, right? And then we talk about the world, how fast is Earth spinning?
1,000 miles down.
1,000 miles per hour. I get dizzy just thinking about that. And we're moving through space, how fast?
67,000 miles per
The
hour.
girl that takes notes. And in one day, we travel how far?
A long way.
A long way.
Work it back.
1,608,000,000 miles a day is what you're traveling. That is awesome. Go back to light. As powerful, as important as it is, and all this thing, and it never ends. Matter of fact, the universe, they're saying, is 93 billion light years in diameter, and it's growing because light never ends. It just keeps going. How did light come into existence?
Spoken.
4 words. That's amazing. That same God wants you to know, he wants you to know his heart intimately. We think, wow, he's God, he's way up there, and there's 7 or 8 billion people, and he's powerful, and he's all that. But he wants you to know his heart. And that's the study we just started last week. That was the introduction.
How awesome is that?
What's that?
I said, how awesome is that?
It's amazing that he wants for us to know him intimately. Like think about someone you're very close with. Don't you know their heart pretty well? You know what their longings are, their emotions. That's what Jesus wants for each one of us with him. So I want this study. I think this study will radically change your relationship with Christ in a way that is extremely personal and intimate and one, as he wants us to have. And as we study, I want it to be about you and him, not us, but make it very personal. Now, we know a lot of things that Jesus has done in the past. We went through those. We know a lot of things he's going to do in the future, and we talked about those. But what is he doing right now? We named 5 things he's doing right now. Let's see how well you do with those 5 things.
He's interceding for us.
He is. He's interceding. How personal does that be? What that means is he's taking your prayers and he's taking them before the Father. The other part of that is he's also praying for you individually. It's not a corporate prayer. It's Bobby. It's Vincent individually. So that's number one. What's something else is he doing?
He's advocating.
He's what? He's interceding and he's advocating, which means what?
He's pleading.
He's pleading our case constantly. Why? Because he cares for you. Okay, you got 2 out of 5. You're so far so good. Woo. Say that again. He's preparing a place for us. He's preparing a place for you. When we were going through heaven a while back, and we talked about, we're going to have mansions, or we're going to have big spaces inside the mansion. It's going to be customized. I believe it's going to be customized just for you. Individual. It isn't just like you go to a hotel and they're all the same. No, yours is going to be customized for him or for you. That's 3. Come on.
Living in us.
He's living inside of us. How personal can that be? Okay, we look at one scripture. There's many scriptures that says, as a believer and a follower of Jesus Christ, His Spirit now lives where? Inside of us. Well, that's intimacy with you. And there's one more, and it's the very first one.
He's sitting at the right hand of God.
Yeah, he's sitting at the right hand of God right now. So he's designed us to want to have that intimate, close relationship with him. And as we go through this study, I would greatly encourage you, as we talk about traits as we go through it, and we're going to talk about a couple today, write them down or remember them and think on these things. But we looked at one last week, and it's worth repeating. And we said in, I think it's 1 John, that God is love and Jesus is God. Therefore, it is safe for me to say that Jesus is love. And so we look at 1 Corinthians 13, and it's worth repeating. And I want you to make this thing personal. There we go. What I did here was, if you weren't here last week, we took the word love and we replaced it with Jesus. And then in bracket, parentheses, I added to make it more personal to you. You should memorize or at least read this often, because it's to you. Jesus is patient and kind with you. So there's 2 characteristics. Jesus is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. Jesus does not demand his own way. Jesus is not irritable, and he keeps no record of being wrong. Jesus does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Watch this. Jesus never gives up on you. Never loses faith in you. Is always hopeful towards you, and endures through every circumstances with you. That's your Jesus. If you're a follower of Christ, that's who he is. So the gospel has 89 chapters in the 4 gospels. And they really, we learn a lot about Jesus. We know we're in, about his birth, and we know about the things that he did, and the miracles, and the lessons that he taught. But it really demonstrates his heart, is what he's doing. And but we want to get to know his real heart, and we get a little bit of an insight. Okay, so 89 chapters really demonstrate by his activities. There's one place we'll look at one for an example where we see his heart even more. We've all asked this at moments of really hard times in our lives. We've asked, does God really care? We have. We may not say it publicly. We may say it privately to ourselves. Does God really care what I'm going through? I mean, I know he cares about the big stuff, but does he care about the ingrown toenail I got going on? Okay. Or does he care I gotta go get a crown? I don't. Thank the Lord I don't get a crown. I don't do well those meetings. You're gonna be great, bro. Pray for Skip. Anyway, So we go, does God care about my little life that goes on? And we're going to show one, but the answer is absolutely yes. And let me make it really, really simple. A small child gets upset over something very small. Spills the milk, drops something, and they're tore up. There's stress, there's those who study children behavior or whatever. They're stressed, they're anxious, they get there. To us, what's a big deal that they drop something on the floor? It's a small thing, right? But a good parent does what? A good parent goes and loves on that child, right? We would look at it and go, why is he upset? Suck it up, little pup. I mean, this is nothing. This is nothing. I'm not worried about that, and walk out of the room. A good parent doesn't do it, and neither does our Father, and neither does Jesus. So, help me out here. If we were a committee in heaven before Jesus was going to come to planet Earth, and you gotta really use your imaginations, but the Father goes, okay guys, we're going to let y'all decide Jesus' first miracle. And what would we say? I mean, seriously, be honest, don't give me the Sunday school answer. We get to choose the first miracle Jesus is going to do on earth. What would you choose?
Not water in the wine.
Not that one. We would choose what? Raising the dead. Like a whole cemetery at one time. Wouldn't that be awesome? Might be a little freaky, but it'd be pretty awesome. We may do something spectacular, like, I don't know, feeding everybody at one time. We want something big. We want a grand entrance. What was his first miracle? Yeah, we know that. We're not going to break it down too much, but in John chapter 2, verses 1 through 11, we get to see the heart of Jesus early on. Now, this is a low-key miracle, okay? It's really low-key. It actually, it wasn't even planned. Matter of fact, look at John chapter 2, verse 4. Now, this is Jesus talking to his mama. I don't recommend you use this language today. It was acceptable then. It was dear woman. So what's the scene here? I should have set up the scene. What's the scene?
The wedding.
At a wedding, and they've done what? Brown wine, which is a big deal back in that day. Okay. Dear woman, what? That's not our problem. Jesus replied. He didn't say it like that. My time is not yet come. If you're going to paraphrase that today, how would Jesus say today?
So what?
Yeah, Mom.
It's not my problem.
It's not my problem, and it's not time for this. Okay. And that's how we do it.
I'm busy.
And I'm busy. And it looks like Jesus will stick with the plan. Okay? It looks like it. But the mom knows how to get her son to do something, right? And some of you go, well, I wish I'd have learned that. I don't know. But anyway. And so, mom doesn't give up. And what does mom say? In verse 5, she says, but his mother told the servants, do whatever he tells you to do. In other words,
He's going to do it.
he's going to do it because he wants to make my mama happy, okay? All right. The question is, why this miracle? Why did he do this? Why did he perform this miracle? It wasn't on the schedule, okay? He did it because it was going to be a social embarrassment to the wedding family, right? I mean, it wasn't like, a lot of people getting ready to die and he steps in. It wasn't like a family was going to break out. It wasn't anything like a war getting ready to break out and he steps in. No, it's going to be a social embarrassment to his family. And he steps up, and it really wasn't in the plan at all. What do you call that? Football quarterback. It's called the play. They go out and they call what? What does that mean? Jesus changes the plan. He calls an audible at that moment. It wasn't planned. Jesus got through just telling them what? It's not time. Not time to reveal who I am.
Yeah, but he knew he was going to do it from the beginning. It wasn't new to him, was it?
Good topic, we won't go down that path. But there's a verse, I can't tell you where it is, but there's a verse that says Jesus grew in wisdom. There's this interesting conversation that he knew everything at that time. He did not know when his return was going to be. Remember, he said that. Yeah, Mike?
I'm just looking at that verse up there where Mary said, just do whatever he tells you.
Yep.
He responds to faith.
Yes, he does.
He trusted whatever he decided to do with what he asked.
Exactly right. We have fun. Every time I hear that verse, I think about Karen. Karen, you still haven't seen that song you sang 40 years ago? We were in a singles group, we put on a little play, and she played Mary, she actually sang this song. And I always remember it, not because it was bad, because it was so good. You did awesome. So here's the question. Why did Jesus do it? Okay, am I in trouble?
No, that was
Your
our
husband wants to talk to me, okay?
That was our first date.
Was it your first date?
That was our first date.
So do you do whatever she tells you
Pretty
to
much.
do?
Without question.
He's grown in wisdom too.
It was painful along the way, wasn't
Yes,
it?
it was.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
What's that?
Chosen does a great job.
Chosen does that. They really do.
It made me understand a little bit.
They really do. Yeah. I love the Chosen.
Another possibility too is that she might not have known that he was going to do what he ended up doing, but she had faith that he would do what was right.
That's right. That's exactly right.
His mother knew who he was, but that's all she knows. She did not know a timeline or anything.
But it also shows how much he cared
Yeah.
at that moment
Yeah.
for what could be somewhat looked upon as insignificant. It wasn't raising the dead or some of the bigger miracles, but yet he cared for that family and the social embarrassment.
That's the whole point. He didn't do it for recognition. What's that?
He also wanted to honor his mother's request.
Went on his mother's request. Exactly. It wasn't planned. Mom asked him. He looked at the family. I think he knew the family. Probably grew up with them because he was invited to the wedding. Okay, he wasn't performing miracles. They didn't like, hey, invite Jesus at the wedding, man. You're gonna do some cool miracles. Okay, it wasn't entertainment. But I think he was just a good friend. I think he looked at the people and he knew the social embarrassment. It was a really big deal back then for that to happen. And I think he simply cared. No other reason. He didn't do it for recognition. Okay, go ahead.
But I think it's important that we also remember, Jesus said, I do nothing of my own will.
Sure.
I do nothing of my own thoughts. It's all from my Father living inside of me.
Yep,
He moves.
that's right.
And when he did it, he sought God out. He didn't, what his father wanted him to do. He didn't just say, well, I'll do it
Right.
because you asked me.
Right.
He said, it's not my time. But he chose to seek God's wisdom.
Yeah.
And did it out of love.
And he just did it out of love and out of care. Now, he didn't do it for recognition. The next verse lets us know that. Next verse says, after they'd done, he told the servants, fill the jars or pots, whatever they call it, up with water, turn it into wine. Cistern, thank you. And take it to the master of the ceremony. And he goes, and we know he didn't do it for any recognition, because verse 9 says, when the master of ceremonies tasted the water that was now wine, not knowing where it had come from. In other words, he didn't know Jesus did this. He wasn't doing it for any recognition. He wasn't getting attention. He says, though, of course, the servants knew. He did it because it mattered to that wedding party. He cares about the little stuff in your life. I'm going to tell you. You think, well, this is a little thing. I don't want to bother Jesus with this. No. He wants you to bother him. 1 Peter 5:7 says, give all your worries and cares to God, for he what? Give all your worries. He cares about the little things. He's intimately concerned. you have spilled milk. No big deal. It is to him if it's a big deal to you. That's intimacy. So he's demonstrated his heart through the gospel, but there's one place that he talks about his heart. He allows us to see it, and that's the main passage for today. It's Matthew 11, 28 through 30. And we're going to unpack this thing for a while, because there's just so much we're going to pull out of this thing. So here we go. And you know it well, but we're going to break it down. Come to me, all you who are weary and you're burdened, and I'll give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your soul. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. All right. We're going to go through this and pull out certain words. But let's start here. Many passages in the scriptures have two areas that they are speaking to. One is the spiritual side, okay, and one is the physical side. Spiritual side, what does this mean? Well, what was happening back in that day was they were living under the law. This is about grace and law, okay? I love this topic. Matter of fact, I've taught it a couple of times over the years, and it takes me months to get through this one topic. It's that awesome. But we're not going to go there, okay? We're going to just mention it and move on. Back in that day, the religious pressures were tremendous. There were 613 laws that those guys had to memorize and keep up and behave and don't mess up. And there were, most of them were just silly laws. But you had to be a good Jew, you had to keep up with all the laws. And you felt tremendous pressure because the religious leaders were watching, they were putting pressure on you. Which, sidetrack, which Jesus is so awesome. I just love how he dealt with people. But the one I always bring up is this. He did something that drove these religious leaders nuts because they were so prideful about the law. Keeping the law. That on one particular day, in a miracle, he spat on the ground, made mud, put in the guy's eyes to go wash it and heal the blind. Did Jesus have to do that? No, he could have just said it. Why did he, and what day was that on?
Sabbath.
So why did he do that?
That was work.
Because it was against the law to spit on the ground on a Sunday. Because it makes mud. Now, that's silly. That's silly. Okay? And Jesus takes it, and I just love him. He's radical. I mean, you can see why they want to get rid of him. Jesus just kind of goes and he puts it in his face. And were they amazed, the rabbis, were they like, man, that guy just healed somebody? No, what were they tore up about? They broke the law. And so can you imagine if we lived in that day, that pressure of, I want you to know, we got to know the 613 laws, and you got to abide those laws. And there's some really silly ones out there, and it was a tremendous amount of pressure. And guess how that made them feel? Heavy and burdened. It's called legalism. And a lot of that still goes on today. And so if you're caught up in legalism, you're caught up in, I got to do all the right things, I can't do none of the bad things, and you don't want to, that's your focus. And that's not where the focus is. The focus is my relationship with Jesus, and that takes care of me behaving and doing all the right things, not doing the bad things, okay? So they've got this tremendous burden, okay? The law, actually in 2 Corinthians chapter 2 or 3, verse 6 says, the law is designed to do what to you?
Make you aware.
Right. It kills you. Other words, it says the law condemns you. Okay? What? I said, I'm going down the street. I said I wasn't going to do it. But real quick. Okay. What that means is they said, I can't live up to all this. Therefore, I am a horrible sinner. And the law condemns you. I can't do it kills you. And that goes what? It creates a need for a Savior. Then you go, I can't do this. And Jesus says, you're right. I came to fulfill the law. You can't do it, but I can. Get involved with me. Okay? Anyway, I won't go down that road where I want to. Okay. All right, so the yoke. Usually, when we hear this taught correctly, they often bring up what's the example of a yoke.
Yeah.
The oxen, a big piece of wood, two oxen working together, which is fine, nothing wrong with that. The yoke was also a term that rabbis would use in that day. And their yoke was how they interpreted scripture. It's their commentary, if you will. And so if I was a rabbi, I would have certain passages and say, this is how I interpret it. My disciples would take my yoke, in other words, how I interpret that scripture, they would take that on to themselves. If you look at that verse again, take my yoke upon you and do what? Learn from me. So the yoke during that time was also meant, Rabbi, I believe in your interpretations. I'm going to follow you. I'm going to take that upon myself. And that's what I'm going to do. That makes me very nervous. You got it quicker! Oh, no! You don't have the shot collar, though, do you? Okay, so that's the spiritual side. I love it. But we're going to talk more about the physical side. Okay, earth, life as it is now, what we deal with. So, tell me some things in life now that makes you burdened and makes you weary.
Taxes.
Taxes. It does. Government. What's that? Government. What else?
Politics.
Politics. Come on. What else?
Our children.
Children. But I mean, that's true.
Government spending.
Government spending. What else? Get down into your life, man. Come on. What really gets you? Work. Discouragement. Regrets.
Prices, inflation.
It just deals. There's lots of things that we allow that just becomes a burden to us. Okay? Like this. Karen, correct me if I'm wrong here. Have you ever had to carry something like a suitcase or a box, something heavy for a long ways? Okay. Anybody got a good story there? Well, I got it. Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong. Chad, when he and his family went to, was it Cancun? And they were coming back, trying to get to the airport. He talked about this. And the traffic was stopped. And they had to walk 4 miles. Is that right? And they're carrying their suitcases. And if I remember correctly, the wheels on his suitcase didn't work. So he carried a suitcase. Am I right? Okay. I run everything by Karen, so I'm okay. All right. So he carried that suitcase for 4 or 4.5 miles. How do you think it was when he finally got there? He was relieved. But can you imagine how tired he must have been, exhausted for carrying all that? We carry baggages, emotional stuff, worries and disappointments and anxieties and regrets and shame and guilt. We carry all that stuff with us.
Some of it's real and some of it's imagined.
Yeah, well, a lot of it's imagined, and especially from a spiritual viewpoint that about forgiveness. There was a ship called the Pelicano. You might know this story? Okay, good. So I'd be wrong, you won't know. But you'll probably fact check me.
Well, not Google.
No, not Google, okay. The Pelicano was known as the most unwanted ship. And the true story. And the reason it was known as the most unwanted ship, it carried a lot of baggage or trash in it. It actually came up to 15,000 tons of trash. Okay? And it would go from port to port, and no one would let them come into port for years. Well, how did that come about? Some of you will remember this. In 1986, you might remember what was going on in Philadelphia. Okay, you saw this on the news. The
All kinds
municipal,
of stuff.
huh?
All kinds of stuff.
All kinds of stuff.
Garbage strike.
There you go. Sounds right. The municipal workers decided we're striking. And remember watching the news and what was on the trash?
On the beach.
On the beaches and the streets. It was, I can see in my mind watching the news, it was piled as high as I am tall everywhere. Just trash everywhere. And so here enters the Pelicano store. The owners of that ship said, hey, we got a way to make a quick buck here. And they said, we will take that, for a fee. We'll take that trash, put it on the ship, and we'll go get rid of it someplace. So all the citizens of Philadelphia said, what? Get rid of it. And they did. And they loaded up 15,000 tons of garbage. But nobody would allow them to get rid of that trash. We did the same thing. We allowed trash to come into our lives. All those things we just named, we allow those to come in our lives, and we don't know how, or we don't get rid of that trash. How do we get rid of that baggage that we're carrying around? Because it's a burden and it makes us weird, doesn't it?
You have to release it.
You gotta release it to Jesus. I'm gonna read you. Oh, by the way, what happens if you don't get rid of that stuff? Do what?
Festers.
Yeah.
Do what?
It festers.
It festers.
Multiplies.
It multiplies.
The enemy.
It's a burden. It weighs you down.
Health issues.
Health issues. Creates other issues. But you just don't experience the joy, the peace. Those things we're supposed to be experiencing. Why? Because we're weighted down carrying a bunch of baggage of stuff that we're not supposed to be carrying. Let me read you a story. I thought this was very relevant to this. Listen to this. Although it took place in 1930s, it remains one of the most mysteries, missing person cases in FBI files. After spending an evening eating out with friends, a 45-year-old New York judge called a taxi and was never seen or heard from again. The FBI immediately became involved. They suspected a kidnapping by someone who held a judicial grudge against him, but that didn't seem to pan out. Then they suspected mafia activity because he was an outspoken enemy of the mafia. But again, that led nowhere. To this day, there's only one clue that remains. When his wife returned to their apartment the evening her husband disappeared, there on the table was a check for a large sum of money made out to her and a note attached to it in her husband's handwriting, which simply said, I am very, very tired. Love, Joe. Was Joe just weary of life? He felt that fatigued. He was just he couldn't release the burdens and the baggage that he had. And it wasn't that he was physically tired. I can handle physically being tired. But when you're emotionally tired, it's tough. They don't even know to today, they still don't know what happened to Joe. But they think that he probably called a cab, went to some unknown location, and took his life. We all, to a certain degree, can relate to Joe.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not supposed to be like that. We become weary, we become burdened down, and Jesus says, it doesn't have to be this way. I care about you individually, and I can carry that baggage. It's no big deal, but you gotta do what? You gotta give it to me. Yes?
To take that point that you just said, Mary Jack, a little bit further, the reason that we are suffering so much under that baggage is because it has separated us from the fellowship, where we
Absolutely.
get our peace and our joy.
That's right.
And as long as we're gonna try to fix it ourselves, we're not turning it over to the one who can fix it.
And why don't we turn it over? pride, or we don't think he cares because it's, you know, to him it's small stuff. We don't know him. We don't know him intimately. We don't trust him.
Don't know how.
Don't know how. Yes, ma'am. What's that?
Lazy.
Lazy?
This is just a little example of how God came through for me in the last couple of weeks. My mother died a year and a half ago, and somebody afterwards gave my dad a little Boston Terrier named Juniper. My dad, I'm an only child. My dad is very introverted. He's at home all the time, just him and this dog. For the last year and a half, he has loved that dog and talked to my dog like half of my conversations with my dad are of him and the dog. So I noticed that Juniper, the dog, was beginning to age quickly. And I was concerned that my dad, who's still grieving my mom, would soon be grieving the dog. And I prayed about it, and I said, Lord, we need another dog. That very week, God brought to us a small, housebroken dog. A week later, Juniper died. So God knew that I cared enough about my dad to answer that prayer in a week's time.
Yeah. It wasn't too small for him, was it?
No, it wasn't.
I was in a meeting a few weeks ago here at church or something, and I don't know this lady well at all, a younger lady, and but she said something in class, and she was sitting right in front of me, and I could tell she was burdened and weary. Okay, and you just tell. And so we got through the little meeting, and she stood up and she turned towards me, and I said, "How you doing?" She says, "Not good, not doing good." And I made a comment. I said, just spend time with the Lord. Tell him how you feel. Crawl up in his lap. Let him love him. And here's her answer. I don't have time. I got little people follow me everywhere I go. I don't have a moment to myself. And wow, she can't unload her burden. She's a Pelicano carrying all that stuff. We're gonna maybe get to it today, but we're gonna look at more how we do that a little bit. Okay?
You know, Jack,
Yes, ma'am.
the Bible says, cast all your cares upon him.
Yeah, first Peter.
Everything.
That's right. Everything.
Everything.
Nothing is too small.
No, it isn't.
Jack.
Yes.
May I share a little story, an analogy that I think helps illustrate this point? There was a hitchhiker on the road, in a country road, and there was nobody driving by, nobody at a long, long time. And finally this truck, just a pickup truck, drives by, and he sees the man, and he's got this heavy burden that he's carrying. And the truck stops and says, you know, "Sir, where are you going? Can I help you?" And he says, "Yeah, I'm going such and such place. Can you help me out?" And he says, "Sure." He says, "Just jump in the bed of the truck. I'm happy to take you." They drive miles and miles and miles, and the truck driver just keeps looking in the back, and he's like puzzled about this man. And finally he stops and he says, "Okay, well, you're here." And the guy says, "Thank you. I can't thank you enough for helping me out." And the truck driver says, "Well, I just have one question. I noticed you had that heavy burden you were carrying, and you left it on you the entire time when we were traveling along the road." And the man said, "You were so kind to pick me up, I couldn't ask you to carry the burden as well."
It's good. Good. Listen, make this personal. You and Jesus, okay? Don't let this be a blanket for everybody. This is you and Jesus. Well, we've already seen one aspect of his heart. That's love. His love for you. Now let's look at. There's two more in this verse right here that we're going to read many times. But what are two? I make it so easy. You got to get this right, people. What are the two more things that we see that we learn about Jesus' heart?
Lowly and meek.
Lowly and meek, or gentle and humble. Y'all are brilliant people. Whenever it talks about, the Bible talks about a heart, it mentions someone's heart. it's more than just an emotion. It's
Is a character.
it's a motivational headquarters. It's who that person is. Okay, it's what drives them in life. So we're going to see a little bit about what Jesus says or tells us about what his motivation, what drives him, what's his passion. And we just read 2 words: gentle and humble. All right, so let's take those and let's bring them down and let's unpack it. And we go, well, he's gentle and humble. He can be translated lots of different ways, but what does gentle mean? Well, define gentle.
It's not harsh.
Okay, we're going to get there. It's not what that is what it's not. That's our next point. But what is it?
Kind.
Caring,
Kind.
Patient.
kind, patient, considerate,
Easy to be with.
easy to be with, tender. Well,
Available,
huh?
available.
Yep. So, what's the opposite? Who said that a minute ago? Bam. What's the opposite of being gentle? Harsh. Unkind. Hard. Critical. Judgmental.
Prickly.
What's that?
Prickly.
Prickly. Prickly. Good, I like that. Condemning. He's not those things. What do you know? Well, we get a little bit of a hint in that same verse. If you go back to 1 Corinthians 13. Okay. There you go. All right. And this begins about verse 4. It says, Jesus, okay.
Keeps no record of being wrong.
Yeah. Okay, I must have not sent it to you. Anyway, it says, Jesus is, and in my notes, bold, capital, and underline for you guys to get this, okay? Jesus is not jealous towards you, or boastful, or proud, or rude towards you. Jesus does not demand his own way. Jesus is not irritable at you, and he keeps no record of being wrong. Jesus does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Jesus is gentle. He's the most understanding, gentle person in the universe. Do not, if you're a follower of Christ, do not envision Jesus as I don't care, I'm too busy, you mess up, I'm going to take a 2x4, hit you upside the head, and I'm waiting for you to mess up. He is none of those things. None. People go, oh, I'm going to do what I want to do. No, if you understand this, you don't want to do those bad things. You want to be pleasing to him. So, that's gentle. But what's humble? What's the definition of being humble? He's gentle and he's humble. What does humble mean?
Subservient.
Behind the scenes.
Put other people before you? What's that?
Behind the scenes.
Okay, behind the scenes. What else?
Not proud.
What?
Not proud.
Not proud. Esteeming others above yourself. I really like this word, approachable. It's like that word. Jesus is approachable. No one in history is more approachable than Jesus. Here's what we have a tendency to do, and you're going to agree with me, I think. Oh, it's Jesus is God. He's sitting at the right hand of the Father. He's busy. He's up here, and I'm down here, and I can't, how is he ever going to relate to me? We'll talk more about this in detail later. No. He's yearning for you to come to him. He's yearning for you to bring all the things that concern you. He's yearning to have an intimate relationship with you. He should be our constant companion. And he is, the fact that he never will leave us or forsake us, but we don't do a great job sometimes recognizing that he's there. Right there. I find it always found interesting when before service they'll say, Lord, just enter our presence. He's always in our presence. He never leaves us.
No, but we have a sad habit of omitting him from our activity.
Oh, we do. We do. Because we don't have that intimate relationship.
That's right.
So, everyone is welcome. No prerequisites. You don't have to perform a certain way. You don't have to earn your right to approach Jesus. He's very approachable. No hoops to jump through. So who qualifies, according to Matthew 11, who qualifies to take his yoke? Anyone who is what? That qualifies you. You don't have to perform and be so good about to approach Jesus.
Come just as you are.
Come as you are. And here's the other cool thing. And you recognize I have nothing to bring him in myself. So, give me some examples in the Bible. When you do that, it makes me remember. You look at the door like, well, there's a gunman out here or something. Yeah, okay. All right, give me some examples. Because if you think I am not worthy to approach, I'm in Christ and I'm saved and I'm following him, I'm still not worthy to bring him. No. Give me some examples in the Bible, Gospels, that proves it differently. They had nothing to bring him.
Jesus wanted the children to come, even though the disciples sent them away.
Good.
He put them front center.
Good.
In portraying himself as the living water, he said, come, take freely.
That's right.
Without price.
That's right.
The lady who touched his garment.
The lady with the issue of blood. That is an awesome story. Because she is considered what? Unclean, the low. What did she bring to Jesus? Nothing. She has nothing to offer. But her burden and what she's weary of. And she's weary. Okay? Who else? Talk to me. Whoever said that. Yeah. Who else?
Even Peter, when Peter met him the first time at the, when he caught so many fish, and Peter said, "Pardon me, I'm too unclean for you."
That's right. Exactly. Who else?
The woman who came, the widow who came and prayed, and finally gave her what she wanted.
Right. She had nothing else to offer. She's too poor. How about the lepers?
Yes.
How about the blind? Because a blind person was considered to have sin or their parents had sin.
Yeah.
Okay? How about the thief on the cross? Yeah. What did he bring to Jesus? Yeah, it goes on and on.
Did Matthew think he wasn't worthy?
What's that?
Did Matthew think he wasn't worthy?
Yeah, it goes on and on. Here's the point, guys. He's waiting. He's just like, he's right there. Just talk to me. Tell me what's on your heart. I care about every little thing in your life. Speak to me. Give it to me. And we stay quiet, and we're this Pelicano ship carrying all this garbage in us for years and years and years, and we can freely unload it and give it to him. What does he want for you?
Life and have
Rest.
Yep. He wants you to have peace. He wants you not to have these burdens.
He wants you to be filled with his joy.
He wants you to feel with your joy. He wants rest for your souls. Why don't we take him up on that? Isn't that pretty awesome to do that? And we just don't. No. All of it.
I think it's because I go back to your example of the box seats. When you got the tickets, you told the story. You got the tickets for a box seat, never been there, went up there and enjoyed everything that was up there. And yet your friend or the other person never realized what was ahead of him, and he never participated, and he missed out on the whole thing, the whole experience.
Who do you know my story about the box seats at the Carolina game? All right, I'll tell you next week. There's another time for that. Listen, guys, this is you. I'm going to say it over and over and over because we're hard-headed. This is about you and Jesus. Not Jesus and all of us. It's intimate. It's personal. He's real. He's alive. He's craving this intimacy. He wants you to know his heart. So far, we know that he loves, he's gentle, kind-hearted, if you will, and he's approachable. He's humble. Bring it all to me. You can't handle it. We weren't designed to handle this stuff. Well, we need him. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Last night I was listening to, you about Asbury University for
Yes.
the revival. So this was a prayer service that they had Thursday night.
So this woman, the student got up and she was sharing, she'd been there for several days and she's battled with depression and anxiety. And so she went forward and she left it and burden there, and she said, I've done this countless times before. She said, I get up and walk away and I carry it back with me.
Right.
She said, but this time I left it there.
Yes.
And I got up and she said, and I just felt this freedom, this peace, this lightness that I had. She said about 3 days later, it started to come back, but she said, this time it doesn't control me.
Listen, we'll spend more time on this later, but I'm gonna make it really simple. It's a conscious decision to do it. It is not complicated. There's not a magical formula. What I trust you, you tell me to, it's yours. And when that thought or worry comes back up, you reject it. That is no longer mine to be worried with. There's something, we're not gonna go into detail, I won't go into details, but there's something that I carried for some time, you know, concerns, worries about that. And I finally, doing this study, I went, geez, I'm not supposed to be carrying this. And I'm going, it's, you know, it's yours. I trust you, take it. Does that thought ever come back up? Absolutely. What do? I take every thought captive in obedience to Christ. I deal with it immediately and go, no. I ain't taking that back.
Behind you, Satan.
Yep, move it on. Move it on. The freedom that gives you is incredible. Why? Because he cares.
Yeah.
He's very personal.
He can't take our burden until we let it go.
He can't take until we let it go. That's exactly right.
I was gonna say, he died to set us free. We have freedom because of.
Absolutely. We'll get more into it. I know we gotta go. But the fruits of the Spirit, love and joy and peace, you cannot do it carrying the baggage. Just let it go. All right. This is just so, I love this study, man. I don't know if it's anything for you, but I spend hours in it. You just come here. Think on these things this week, will you? Okay. You got a prayer request, you're going to do what with it?
By 4 o'clock, Eastern time.
There you go. Do that. Okay, yes, Kim.
Real quickly, I forgot to mention this at the beginning. I got an email on Thursday from someone who said they were going to send me something. It was coming in the mail that was going to help this class. That was the bail. And it was from George, who sent it and said, I hope you'll have this will help with the Exhorters. So thank you, George. And I did get a text during the class. Ann Williams' mother, they just brought her down here. She fell, hit her head on a dresser. She's now at the hospital in Winston. I'm not sure if it's Baptist or not, but they said they have some tough decisions to make. So just wanted to throw that out here right quick.
We'll be praying for them. Send your emails to Cheryl by 4 o'clock today. She'll get them out. I love you guys. This is a great study. I'm going to tell you, please don't just let it go by. Think on these things. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for being so personal, not like other false gods that are distant and not real. You are very real. I pray, as I often do, for each one of us, as Paul prayed, that we will receive power to understand how much you love us, or how much you want to be constantly one with us. Help us to get this, I pray. In Christ's name, amen.